Paying off debt is mathematically better than saving money. I know it sounds a little crazy, but in this video, I'm going to explain exactly why that is the case. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know that I'm all about paying off debt, saving, and investing. You might not know exactly why I put it in that order, but after this video, you're going to be sure. And if you're new to the channel, my name is Anthony. Welcome. I teach people to take control of their money so that they can live the life of your dreams. So definitely subscribe because I post multiple times a week. Now, to better explain why it's just a fact that paying off debt is better than saving money, I'm going to kind of use an example from my own life. So before I got married, I never had any debt. And then when I did get married, my wife actually brought $11,000 worth of credit card debt into the relationship. Now, this is just a side note, but I definitely believe that if you get married, you should handle your money as one entity. You can still have separate bank accounts, but you need to know exactly how much money both of you guys have because you guys are working together as one unit going forward. Just to further push this point, when you get married, you really tell someone that I'm giving all of myself to you and you're giving all of yourself to me. And money's a really great way to show that because I am going to give you all my money. You're going to give me all your money. I'm going to give you all of my debt. You're going to give me all of your debt. And we're going to handle it all together as one unit. And that's really what marriage is. That's why you say those vows. And that's what I believe, which is why we handle our money this way. So I came into marriage and I got $11,000 in debt, just plopped right down into my lap. And so I was like, hey, we got to have a plan to really attack this. But I didn't just do that because I didn't want to have debt or because I think that debt is morally wrong. It's just mathematically the case. We could put thousands and thousands of dollars into a bank account and we'd actually end up worse than if we'd have just paid off all the debt first. Let me explain. So this $11,000 in debt that I acquired actually had interest rates of 22 to 27%, which is kind of ridiculous, but that's pretty typical for any credit card interest rates, which is why you should never carry a balance on your credit card. So these interest rates, if we just average it down to 25%, which is probably a little bit lower than what it actually was, that means that every single month, I was accruing 2.083% interest every month, and every year 25%, even if we don't compound interest. So it's actually a little bit higher than what the 25% number is. Now, if I could get a return that would get 25% year over year, I would take that in a heartbeat. I don't know anyone who wouldn't. That is a crazy rate of return, especially when you're really only projected to make 7 to 10% maybe if you're investing well. So if I could get 25%, man, I would put everything that I had into that investment because that would be so much better, 3 or 4 times better than what I'd be getting elsewhere. And that's exactly what I am doing if I am paying off this debt rather than letting it accrue. I know it doesn't necessarily seem that way, but if we look at it in terms of a balance sheet of your net worth with assets or a plus sign on one column and liabilities or a negative sign on the other, we're going to really be able to start to understand how this works. Because your personal net worth is really just broken down into those two categories, assets and liabilities. This makes your net worth go up and this makes your net worth go down. So as these two piles continue to grow or accrue interest or return, you're going to have your net worth go up and down accordingly. And an even simpler way to think about this is everything that you own is an asset and everything that you owe is a liability. And this is why paying off debt is actually better than saving money, because this is dragging it down at a high interest rate, while saving money usually is at a lower interest rate, but we'll get into that in just one second. So back to my story. I'm $11,000 in debt, credit card debt now, which is in this side, the liabilities column. And so as that interest, the 25% continues to grow year over year, my net worth continues to go down further and further. So that 25% averages to be more than $200 a month, and about $2,700 per year that it continues to drag my net worth down. So if I just didn't touch this money, didn't make any payments, and let that $11,000 acquire 25% interest, that $11,000 is going to turn into $13,700. So my net worth would go from negative $11,000 to negative $13,700. So say I save $1,000 every month. That's $12,000 over the course of a year. That's a lot of money. That's honestly a great job. If you're saving $1,000 a month, you're killing it. Keep going, keep working, keep hustling. But that $12,000 is not going to get me anywhere near a 25% rate of return. We'll just use my own personal bank accounts right now. So I have a Wells Fargo account that I get 0.01% interest on, which is ridiculously stupid. I just got an interest payment on the $5,000 that I have in that account of 6 cents. So that stinks. And so that 0.01% does me no good. And that's pretty much the average that you're going to get at most banks that are brick and mortar. You can go into a bank and deposit money, talk to a teller, talk to a banker because they have a lot of overhead expenses. We also keep money with 2 online banks. with Wealthfront, which is more of a brokerage account where I get 2.32% interest, which is really good, and Ally Bank, which we do some checking with, as well as our savings account at 1.9% interest. Now those are much better than the 0.01% interest, but really if you look at that 2.32%, it's barely more than 1 month's worth of interest on the 25% credit card debt. And this pretty much just breaks down why savings are worse than paying off debt. Say I save $1,000 every month for a year. That's $12,000. And we're going to assume that I get the highest rate of return that I can in that savings account. So my Wealthfront savings account, which gets 2.32% interest per year. We're just going to assume that whole 2% accrues on that $12,000. 2.32% of $12,000 is $278.40. So at the end of this whole year, if I get interest on the whole $12,000 for the year, which I wouldn't, but if I did, to keep things simple, I would have $12,278.40. Now, let's take a look at if I would have used that $1,000 every month to pay off my $11,000 in credit card debt. Because if I save this $12,000 and just let this credit card debt grow, some people would be like, hey, that's great. You just saved $12,000. You got a decent interest rate. You have $12,278.40 in this bank account. And a lot of people just look at this number and think, wow, I'm doing great. Look at how much money I have in the bank. But you're actually making your net worth continue to go down by not paying off your debt, which is worse for you in the long run. Because over that same year of not touching this credit card debt, that $11,000 turned into $13,700, even more than that. So my overall net worth of $12,278.40 minus $13,700 is actually negative $1,412.60. Just because I saved all this money doesn't necessarily mean that I'm doing the best thing financially. That's really what you need to think about. So let's look at it another way. Let's say that I save $1,000 just to get started because I want to make sure that I have some liquid cash in the event that I need a small emergency covered so that I can continue to my momentum. But let's put all the other $1,000 towards our credit card debt because it has a higher interest rate than I'm able to make in my savings account and really knock it out. This is a table that kind of shows exactly what that is. And I'm going to put that right here. In this example, I make it even a little bit more realistic because I have interest accrue monthly, which means that I would actually have more interest than the $2,700 that I posed in the last example. Over these 12 months, we see that I start by saving $1,000 and then I put a $1,000 payment every single month for the next 12 months. So even though I had interest accrue monthly, which means that I actually had more interest payments percentage-wise than I did in the last example where I had $2,700 of interest over a year, my net worth actually comes out over $600 better. So as you can see, even though I had interest accrue monthly, my net worth was only negative $819.90. Now it's still negative. We don't want that. We want to continue to get in the positive so we can really build wealth. But that's a lot better than the negative $1,400. It's more than $600 better just because I actually saved money by paying off debt rather than putting it into a bank account. Now my bank account's going to look worse because I only have $1,000 versus $12,000 in it. But if you really have a robust understanding of your financial equation, you're going to know that this is way better for you long term because now I'm going to start having more momentum with my money. So this is a very basic explanation of why saving money is actually worse than paying off debt. It'd be better mathematically for you to pay absolutely nothing into your savings and use it all to pay off the debt because you're going to end out with a higher net worth over time. And I know this sounds a little bit crazy to save nothing, and I absolutely do think that it's crazy to save nothing, which is why, like I said in my example earlier, I actually saved $1,000 before we started just destroying all of our debt. But we were able to pay off our $11,000 as fast as we possibly could because we understand that it was being detrimental to our net worth and to our plans to take control of our money and really attain that freedom financially that we wanted to have. So here are a few practical points for saving, paying off debt, and investing. And I know that last word, investing, isn't something you've really heard a lot in this video, but don't worry, I'm getting to it. I know it's important. You're screaming at me through the screen. I can hear you, but I'm getting to it. Don't worry. So the first practical point that I have is actually paying off debt can feel really scary. It might feel like you're not getting anywhere in your finances. Your bank account is staying at $500, $1,000 or whatever, and you're just putting it all towards this debt because you really haven't felt the weight of what that debt means. And I'm not saying that you should have your bank account say zero the whole time that you're going through this process. There is something to be said about little emergencies coming up and you just really having to knock them out by not taking out more debt to do that. And that really is just to keep your momentum, because momentum is something that is super important when you're talking about personal finance, because personal finance is really a lot more about behavior than it is math. So for example, my wife and I kept $1,000 in our savings account during the whole time we did this. We didn't end up needing to dip into that. We almost did, but we were able to cover it with cash flow from our income. But we kept that money in there, which gave us that little bit of safety net to see, oh look, I have 3 zeros and a 1 in that account, which means that if anything bad happens, I'm going to be able to take care of it. And then we're able to use everything else to just pay off this debt as fast as possible, because we understood that mathematically that was going to be the fastest way to get to where we wanted to be financially. Now, there isn't some magic number that this little bank account needs to be at in order to cover your emergencies. It should be big enough to cover anything small that might arise that would really just take the momentum out of it. Because if there's a $600 problem with your car, it's really not that big of a deal. But if you only kept $300 in this account, then you're going to feel like you're making less progress and having less momentum than if you would have had $1,000 to say, okay, I could just cut a check right now, it's done. But it shouldn't be big enough that you feel really comfortable with this number and it makes you more lazy in paying off your debt. It should be a little bit uncomfortable to have that $1,000. I know for my wife and I, when I would look at that account, I would be like, oh, that's so small, I have no money. But I was realizing that my net worth was continuing to increase at a faster rate than it would if I was just saving money. So I continued down this path of paying off debt as fast as possible so that I could put more money in my savings account. My second action point might actually be a little bit scarier for you. After you determine the number that your mini bank account should be at, take all the money that you have that is above that number and pay off debt with it. I know that this might sound crazy because you're losing cash, but if you've understood anything from this video, you understand that that's actually the best thing mathematically to do so that you have the most money possible. My third practical point is about investing. See, I told you we get there. I told you we get there. And investing is really one of the ways that you're going to be able to grow your money the fastest. Now, whatever it is, whether assets or liabilities, the higher the interest rate or the rate of return is, the higher you're going to either be gaining net worth or losing net worth if your interest rate is higher. So, paying off this debt at 25% is the best ROI that I could possibly get, because I'm technically paying this money off and getting a 25% return on my net worth. So, after you have saved some money, paid off all of your debt, and then saved all the rest of your money in this to get up to 3 to 12 months of expenses, it's time to invest as much as you possibly can. Now, the reason we invest in an emergency fund first, which isn't really an investment, it's more of an insurance policy, is because we want to make sure that if anything happens, we keep our momentum. Because personal finance, like I said, is all about momentum. So we have $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 in this account before we get started aggressively investing, so that if anything comes up, we're just able to cover it and not have to go back into debt, which will drag down our net worth. Instead, we're able to continue to invest and increase our net worth. And honestly, the whole premise that saving money is actually worse than paying off debt comes down to interest rates, which is why you hear a lot of people saying that if you have debt around 3 to 5% interest, it might actually be better for you to just start investing money instead, because you can probably get a return of around 7 to 10% if you're investing. Now, honestly, this really does come down to personal preference and what's contextual to you, because personal finance is all about context. So if you're comfortable keeping a 3 or 4% mortgage and just paying normal payments on it and then investing everything else that you can, you're probably going to end up with a little bit higher of a return. But personal finance isn't all about math. And for me, I love math. So as much return I'm going to be able to get, that makes me feel most comfortable because I understand it in my mind mathematically. Now, some people aren't math-minded, and so they want to feel a little bit more comfortable. So their mini emergency fund might be $2,000 instead of $1,000. And their emergency fund might be 12 months of expenses instead of 3 months of expenses like mine is. They also might want to make sure that they pay off as much debt as possible because that makes them more comfortable. And if that makes them more comfortable, then that's awesome. Do that. Just make sure that you're investing as much as possible as quickly as you can. Which, if that means that you have to pay off every single thing of debt that you have before you do that, go ahead. You just need to know where the line is for you to make sure that you have paid off all of your debts as aggressively as possible and are investing as much as possible. Understanding the math behind it all, because understanding is important, even though behavior is what's going to give you the results in personal finance. Now, my last action point is to smash the like button and then share this video with anybody who you think needs the kick in the pants to get rid of their debt and then to start living the life of their dreams because they understand their finances and they're taking control of their money. But back to my story real quick of having that $11,000 of credit card debt. I had that $11,000 in debt. We saved $1,000 that we just put into our bank account and let it sit there, and we just aggressively paid off all of that debt. Now, we also had a car loan because my wife had a newer 2016 Toyota Corolla, and we ended up selling that car and actually selling it for $2,000 less than what we owed on it. So we ended up having to cover that $2,000 overage ourselves. We paid off more than $11,000 in credit card debt, not counting the interest. And we ended up saving a little over $9,100 and investing about $500 into my company Roth 401k. We did all this in less than 1 year from when we got married last year. And if you want results like this on $70,000 of income, just like we have, it's really all about your intentionality. So follow along with me on this journey. Definitely subscribe to have that accountability as well so that you'll be able to live the life of your dreams down the road. Now, if you're wondering why I haven't talked at all about student debt in terms of my wife or myself and our equation financially, check out my video here as to how I graduated college with no